themselves may, in a limited way, be coming to understand the importance of freedom.
Hello, Westchester, and welcome to Rob Ceru Live. First, I want to thank Ms. Dina Schumacher and the board members of LMC TV for this opportunity, along with the volunteers filming this very broadcast. Thank you. I am Rob Ceru, a retired police officer, an official member of the media, and I do a radio show here in Westchester also. I've been at this for almost 5 years and would like to say that the world and this country are changing in fundamental ways that I find hard to describe or believe at times. Children are being raised in broken one-parent homes as a matter of course. The nuclear family is either shunned upon or it's on its way to extinction. Kids and some adults are married to their iPhones rather than real human communication. The middle-class family income is down almost 10% over the last decade. Patience and human decency for one another, along with being quick to anger, is par for course. Homelessness, human trafficking here in America is on the rise but not reported by the media. School and campus shootings that we are now absorbing as the new normal, or what are you going to do? Acceptance into a brave new America makes me think that this is not America at all. We lost our way. A former deceased president said that our freedom must be fought for to be maintained. There will always be people chipping away at the wholesome and goodness that is in each and every one of us until either we conform or change. Is it working? For example, have you ever switched lanes while driving, and if the person behind you feels they were disrespected, they slam on the horn and ride up on you like you feel you may be assaulted by them or worse? Perception is everything. Perception is reality. However, if the perception of us Americans is to roll over one another and to instantaneously judge or quickly react, and we continue to fight one another for stupidity and have complete disregard for each other's existence, then I am afraid that America is truly gone. Everyone, and I mean everyone, that I speak to, whether they follow the news or not, knows that we are broken spiritually, fiscally, and the threat of real terror is amongst us. We refuse to secure our borders, call evil by its name, and some of us want to just continue our self-centered way of life without demanding the protections from our government agencies and one another to constantly battle evil, along with the anarchists that want to destroy the Western way of life because they think that some are too arrogant, too full of ourselves, don't dress with burqas, don't practice Sharia law, are Christians or Jews, and that to them in itself is a reason for all of us Americans to be murdered? Because of political correctness, which originated from Hitler in the 1920s, taught from the German Frankfurt School as a tool, a mind tool to prohibit and shun free thinking, creativity, and the gift that's inside each and every one of us, filtered its way to America, and the disease of political correctness now joked upon by people here today when people say, I want to be politically correct, lives here as a cancer in this modern and dangerous time we live in. So where do we go from here? Will people change for the better or worse when their backs are against the wall? Remember the togetherness we had with one another after 9/11/01? Try to find that just 14 years later today, or try to find someone displaying the American flag with proudness, acceptance of things that are wrong, thinking we don't have a say as Americans, the person who complains and doesn't vote, and just giving up on the issues we find dear to us is not an option anymore. Either stand up for what you believe in and fight for it through legal channels in the current democratic system in place, or lose a country along with your free speech, ability to practice any religion you want. You will lose your privacy, right to a fair trial, and maybe have your home and bank account confiscated for just cause or without cause or valid reason at all. America, people next year will be at a turning point that I believe no politician could fix. The fix has to come from us. And if we are too busy being jealous by looking at what our neighbors have versus what I don't have, the rich being why I'm poor, my friends having a better car than me, being critical of each other for every word we say, thinking the more friends we have on social media are real friends versus virtual friends, and simply not living in reality. We must live in reality and not create the world according to how we feel. It is what it is, and we must accept it to a point. It is not necessarily what we think it is. Look, I get it. The news is painful to human emotions at times, but if you think for 1 second that the mainstream media is delivering the news that matters to you, then think again. There are few networks, perhaps one or two, that will deliver the news out of hundreds of daily events happening here and around the globe that affect humanity. Things we have a right to know about that are important no matter how much they hurt our emotions. I say it is better to know than not know. Why? Because you have a right to know. The people can share the story and try to stand up for or against it. Evil should always have light shining on it. Exposure to truth, major events, both good and bad, that are major regarding the things that are happening all over. Instead, your favorite news group, if you watch or listen to the news at all, has skewed your version of what they want you to believe by spinning a story or simply not reporting it at all. I feel as a member of the press that people have a right to know obscure or violent or off-the-wall events that could affect crimes against humanity or anything major that affects us, not just the small hand-picked feel-good stories. Again, you have a right to know. I scour the globe through my research and will bring you the things that may upset you, may inspire you, or may educate you all at the same time because, folks, you have a right to know and a right to be informed every step of the way. So with this, let's get to work. Folks, first of all, there's an issue going on in Ferguson last night where violence erupted afterwards when the decision was made not to indict the police officer. What happens to our sense of are we at the stage in our lives where we're rioting and over somebody's skin color because of unjust practices that is perception, which we think perception is the reality? Folks, let me explain something. Last night, when the decision came down, and there was a very detailed description by the prosecutor of why the grand jury didn't indict, which consisted of 9 whites and 3 blacks. They unanimously said that there was no crime committed in the death of Michael Brown. I want you to take a look at the violence last night, and you tell me if this destroying a town and destroying property was worth the end result. I want you to take a look at this video, and you tell me.
Tensions are rising in Ferguson. The last 2 nights, local and out-of-town protesters have scuffled with police and tried to block traffic on city streets. 3 arrests last night. All this as it becomes clear that at any moment, the grand jury will announce its decision on whether or not police officer Darren Wilson will be indicted for the shooting death of Michael Brown.
Violence is not going to be tolerated.
Local law enforcement officials say they've spent the last 3 months preparing for this moment. Missouri National Guard soldiers will be stationed at almost 4 dozen locations to help prevent property damage. St. Louis officials say law enforcement officers on the ground will be more tolerant of peaceful protesters engaging in civil disobedience, but that violent protesting will be squashed.
We're going to be respectful of the protesters. We're going to be respectful of the residents of these communities. We're going to be respectful for the protesters' right to protest, but we also understand that the police need to protect themselves as well.
With the grand jury decision expected soon, the St. Louis area airwaves are filled with messages urging peace from St. Louis Rams football players. All eyes are on us now.
Folks, do you understand where we're going with this? The attorney for Michael Brown's family does not want violence any more than than anybody else who has a mind, a civil mind about them and doesn't want violence because violence is never the answer. It appears that this story has been sensationalized for way too long through social media and other outlets, and it is the hottest story in the nation right now. We have to understand that down the road, it doesn't seem like tensions like this are going to ever fix themselves. Community policing is always one way to bring racial tensions and bring people together, but apparently it's not working. The Rodney King incident that happened 20-something years ago, over 25 years ago now, I believe, has not corrected that. We have not learned anything from that incident till now. I have to say that moving forward, where could America come together? How could we all come together? How could we make America better when incidents like that happen? It's terrible that a life was lost, but I have to tell you folks, when a life is lost, that's a tragedy, no matter justified or not, self-defense or not. But I must say to you that going forward, if we don't understand that, if we don't take a common sense approach to the way things are, then what's going to happen is that these things will continue. And if they continue, eventually, everybody's going to be, every time something happens that's sensationalized by the media or sensationalized on blogging or social networks, what's going to happen is that it's going to continue and it's going to keep continuing. The riots last night were in virtually all major metropolitan cities. San Francisco, New York City. The police commissioner in New York had fake blood thrown on his face. I don't know if you saw that. Also, in other parts, San Diego, countless other cities, there were gatherings. I saw there were hundreds of buildings in the Ferguson area that were lit ablaze, including police cars, the flipping of police cars, and the violence did not stop. It went on to late night last night, and I have to tell you, where do we go from here? Where do we go from here, folks? Violence is never the answer, but it seems like it's the way of life. It seems like the old things repeat themselves into the new. The new things are here to stay, and I don't understand it. Do you? Where do we go with the future of America? The answer is, I don't know. All I know, folks, is that I personally don't want to change who I am to become somebody different if my back is against the wall. Do you? Every single person that I speak to not only is not properly informed, but they also know that something is fundamentally wrong with America. We have been transformed. Forget about who's in office. Forget about whether you like the president or not. I'm talking about a fundamental transformation has occurred within the past 5 years. And I don't know what the future holds for the youngsters of this generation or myself or the people older than me. All I could tell you is that I now see things that are impossible to achieve. Unemployment, for example, is at an all-time high. But the real numbers don't include the people who fell off the bandwagon and said, you know what, I don't want to look for work anymore because I can't take it anymore because there is no jobs out there. I've been told that unemployment might be as high as 1 in 3 people, or it's going to be by 2015, not the 5.8% you see in the mainstream news today. Also, everybody, the kids that go to college, the kids are going to college, they're spending $100,000 and they're in debt at the end of a 4-year degree at a prime college. And what do they have to show for it? They can't get jobs. Everybody is struggling. When I said earlier that the median income of the average person in the United States is down 10% over the last decade, how do you live with that when property taxes go up? When gasoline goes up, even though it's going down now, trust me, it will go up again. When food prices are up 40% alone over the past 3 years, how is somebody supposed to live? The middle class is being taxed to the point of annihilation and extinction. So where do we go? I ask you again. You can't take from the poor because they don't have anything. The rich are in bed with the lobbyists in Washington to protect their interests and their tax interests. So who do you go after? The middle class. The stresses on the middle class are so high right now. Finding a job is a job in itself for a lot of people. 3 part-time jobs could be par for the course. We're not manufacturing anything here in America anymore. Nothing is being created here. This is based on a market economy, a fraudulent stock market, which some say will crash to below 3,500 from its current almost 18,000 level. People who don't know any better, folks, are looking for the quick buck. And look, I get it. Money runs the world, and there's nothing we could do about that. Money puts a roof over your head. Money feeds you. Money puts gas in your car. Money pays the rent. However, what's going to happen when we don't have any more money because we don't have the jobs to give to people in America? And also compounded with the $18 trillion debt that's going up every day in this country, our dollar in our pocket becomes worth less because the purchasing power becomes diminished. Other countries don't respect us anymore. The Saudis want to do business of purchasing oil with other countries and trade in their dollars, such as the yuan or the ruble. They don't care about the United States dollar anymore because other countries have lost respect for us. But understand something, America. It goes back to the very first story that we talked about today. America is imploding on itself. We, the people, are turning on ourselves. The people of Ferguson are destroying their own town. When we become frustrated, we pick on our neighbor or our friends or look for an excuse for fighting or infighting. So who's really destroying America? Is it us or is it other countries? What's going to happen, folks, with the next stock market crash? The next 2008 event I'm hearing is going to make the 2008 stock market crash look like Disneyland. What's going to happen when the greatest transference of wealth in the global planet Earth's history is transferred to somebody else? Because let's face it, when the stock market goes down, folks, the money doesn't disappear. The money goes into somebody else's pocket. So what do we do with that? Do we lack the knowledge? Do we have enough knowledge to be in the stock market? It seems like everybody wants to do something and make their, quick buck. I get it. Like I said earlier, money makes the world go round. At this point, I have to say, find out who you are. Stick to who you are. Because we have a lot of problems. We have open borders. Right now, they're saying that terror is within, the enemy is here already. And if that is true, I wouldn't really be too concerned about 5 million undocumented illegals that President Obama says he's going to make legalized. I would be worried about the terror within. Okay, folks, the terror. Let's talk about the terror just for a second here. A lot of people say groups like ISIS who want to penetrate America and behead Americans, these groups are already here. Supposedly there are 30 extreme jihad groups already here in America. What are they waiting for? I don't know. All I could tell you is that as a retired police officer, when I was in the academy, and I'll never forget this in 1997, that terror groups are very, very patient. They will wait for the right moment for a precision instrument type of attack. They don't. They have all the patience in the world. So what are we going to do? What are we going to do when things happen here in America? Because let's face it, we're not protected by the oceans anymore. Terror is here. Will something happen in the future? I pray not. But let's talk about something else for a second, how we're being hit in other ways. Financially, the American dollar is being demised as we speak. Other countries, like I said earlier, only want to trade with those countries to buy oil from OPEC and the Saudis. Also, remember that incident in 2013 that the mainstream media never told you about? I talked about it here with staff off the air. It's called the bank confiscation of Cyprus in 2013. In a country called Cyprus that you may have never heard of, deposit holders had 60% of their bank accounts taken overnight, just like that. Why? To make up for the debts of the country's government. A lot of people say, I question tons of people of all walks of life, politicians. I mean, people who know their stuff, lawyers, doctors, and I just throw it at them because I like to talk to people. I like to talk about real issues. I say, hey, listen, do you think a confiscation could happen here in America of people's bank accounts, whether you have $10 or $10 million, doesn't matter. We're talking about a trampling of your fundamental freedoms. They say to me, Rob, no way. Can never happen here in America. People would rise up and there would be an abomination against, really. I say they don't care at this point. I say if they will either tax you to death and force you, especially out of New York State, people are leaving New York State like I've never seen before. Do you think for 1 second that they would not think about taking your bank account for the betterment of the country? It's already been talked about, folks. Here in America, there has been talks through the revised Dodd-Frank Act of 2010 and recently by the Vice Chairman of the Federal Reserve to possibly take your bank account. They're talking about it. The Dodd-Frank Act revision says that bank account holders are no longer considered, we're considered unsecured creditors, unsecured deposit holders, if you will. We come last, which means that if the bank fails and their derivatives on their books and mortgages are more, and they are more than the savings that's held at any one institution, it means they don't have to pay you back if they don't want to. Now, folks, that's scary. So what do you do? Where do you put your money? After this first broadcast airs, I'd like to say from the second broadcast forward, I will take your calls at 914-381-0150. This is Rob Ceru Live. I will happily take your calls. We could talk about the issues. You could ask me anything you want. If I know the answer, I'll give it to you. If I don't, please feel free to exercise your First Amendment rights of free speech. Challenge me if you like, if you feel the need. I'm here and I'm an open book. This is what I do for a living. From my former profession, I wish I would have found this profession first. But with that, I have to tell you, knowing the issues, it took a little time for me to get used to hearing all the bad stuff. But I think it's right to know what's coming. You know, it's good to know what's coming your way than not know what's coming your way. That's just me. There's no need for me to handpick stories that I think are, something you might want to hear that's fluffy and nice. Yeah, I'll report about the good too when I see it. There's a lot of good deeds that people are doing throughout the country. People are doing good deeds for one another every day. It's not just the bad stuff. But I figure if you know the bad stuff, at least you could have a voice one day when you have to stand up or rally or vote. Let me get back to the money thing just for a couple of seconds here. I want to tell you that if you think that it's right for somebody to go into your bank account and take it, it might be coming here to America. And if it does, what will you do the day after? What will you do if you have your life savings like the people of Cyprus who were crying on barricaded lines and said, "Why are you taking my money? Why would you do this?" Now keep in mind, Cyprus is a gunless society. I'm not saying Americans are going to rise up and start shooting government officials. I would hope they don't. Because violence, like I said at the very beginning of the Ferguson story, that violence is never the answer. Because changing who I am only makes me part of the problem, not part of the solution. I think Americans are their best when we are united. And I think that once the unitedness fails like it is currently, and it feels like every man for himself, I'm afraid that's when we have real problems, like what happened in Ferguson. We do have a right to peaceful protests, but a lot of people didn't do that last night. And it's sad that 30 years later we're still having racial wars. But let me stick to the point that I was at for a second before we go. I'd like to say that it seems like government thinks that we're too stupid to manage our money, to get a job, to do what we want to do, but yet they're the ones putting the regulation and strangulation on us. Don't get me wrong, I think regulation is a beautiful thing in certain circumstances, but not to regulate our lives, not to regulate the Bill of Rights, not to regulate the Constitution. I don't know what America is going to look like in 5 years from now. The velocity of how we're moving forward scares me to the point that I don't know. Things are changing so rapidly. All I want to say, folks, when I wrap up tonight is don't give up the hope. Pray. Praying is always a good thing. I say pray to your God if you're a spiritual person. Find what makes you whole again and stick to that. My job for you is to deliver the most compelling news stories that I could find here and around the globe, and I will continue to deliver those news stories to you each month, month after month. And it's a pleasure to be here at this station. It's an honor, and I want to say, as we wrap up for tonight, leave here in peace. Leave here knowing that you're not alone. This is Rob Ceru Live. I am Rob Ceru. I look forward to our meeting next time and your call-in commentary and points of view. Thank you for being here. Good night.